Society is full of human predators, and among them, psychopaths occupy a prominent place. They manipulate, deceive, exploit, and when convenient, destroy without feeling guilt or remorse. Contrary to popular belief, most psychopaths don't commit violent crimes, nor do they fit the stereotype of serial killers like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. Many operate in the shadows, harming people around them in subtle but devastating ways. Their ability to blend into society and camouflage their true nature makes them dangerous and difficult to identify. Psychologist and psychopathy expert Robert Hare estimates that approximately 1% of the population is psychopathic, while psychologist Martha Stout suggests that the figure could be as high as 4%. Although this may seem like a small percentage, its impact is disproportionately high, especially as these people tend to seek positions of power. Studies indicate that psychopaths are overrepresented in leadership positions in the corporate world and in politics, environments where a lack of empathy, the ability to manipulate, and the absence of fear or guilt are strategic advantages. Unlike the majority who feel hesitation or anguish when harming someone, psychopaths act without moral restraint, which facilitates their rise in hierarchical structures. One of the most worrying factors about psychopathy is the lack of in-depth research on the subject. Despite the enormous social impact of this disorder, it receives less academic attention than other psychiatric conditions. Robert Hare notes that psychopathy is responsible for more suffering and social dysfunction than all other psychiatric illnesses combined. However, the absence of guilt and the talent for dissimulation mean that many psychopaths are never diagnosed or even suspected of having a disorder. To the inattentive observer, they can appear charismatic, confident, and even inspiring. The popular image of the psychopath is strongly associated with violent criminals, but this distorted view prevents people from recognizing psychopaths who operate within the law. They don't need to resort to brute force to destroy lives. In many cases, the damage occurs through psychological manipulation, emotional abuse, or financial exploitation. A boss who consciously destroys the careers of subordinates, a partner who annihilates the self-esteem of the person they are in a relationship with, or a politician who blatantly lies to deceive the public are examples of psychopaths at work. Their crimes leave no physical traces, but they destroy lives just as deeply. Martha Stout emphasizes that most people are unaware of the true nature of psychopathy. When they think of psychopaths, they imagine brutal criminals without realizing that many of them live freely among us. One of the reasons they are so difficult to identify is that they blend in perfectly with society. They study and imitate human behavior to appear normal, but this normality is just a mask, a disguise they use to manipulate and control others. What differentiates a psychopath from an ordinary person is the absence of conscience. While most people feel guilt and empathy, psychopaths see these emotions as weaknesses that can be exploited. They don't connect emotionally with anyone, they don't feel remorse, and they don't establish genuine emotional bonds. For them, people are not companions, friends, or partners. They are just means to an end. This emotional emptiness makes them ruthless, because nothing stops them from pursuing their goals, regardless of the cost to others. Understanding how psychopaths operate is essential to avoid becoming one of their victims. Many people only realize they are dealing with a psychopath when they have already suffered irreparable damage, whether emotionally, financially, or professionally. However, there are signs that can be identified before the damage is done. Throughout this video, we will explore the psychology of psychopaths, their tactics, and how we can protect ourselves from these silent predators. Most people feel empathy when they see the suffering of others. If we hurt someone, we experience guilt and remorse because our conscience prevents us from deliberately acting against the well-being of others. However, for a psychopath, these feelings are completely alien. They feel no empathy, no guilt, and no love. Genuine emotional connections are simply not part of their life experience. This doesn't mean that a psychopath is incapable of imitating these feelings. On the contrary, he studies them carefully in order to use them to his advantage. If a psychopath maintains ties with other people, it is not out of attachment or affection, but because they see these individuals as tools, resources, or extensions of themselves. They may maintain relationships out of convenience, feign affection, to gain advantages, and manipulate emotions to ensure that people remain under their control. This emotional coldness is what makes psychopaths so dangerous. Unlike an ordinary person who hesitates to harm others, a psychopath sees it only as a means to achieve their goals. Their lack of empathy and guilt also makes them indifferent to the suffering they cause. As Robert Hare explains, psychopaths don't react to traumatic events in the same way as the average person. Even when faced with distressing situations, such as witnessing pain or violence, their behavior remains impassive, cold, almost mechanical. For them, there is no emotional difference between witnessing a tragedy and performing a banal everyday task. This is why psychopaths can commit cruel acts without showing any emotional disturbance. This lack of emotional reactions also makes them masters of manipulation. Psychopaths know that emotions are a weakness for most people, so they learn to use them as weapons. They carefully observe how others react to fear, guilt, and love, and exploit these vulnerabilities to get what they want. If they need to win someone's trust, they can pretend to be kind and understanding. If they want to weaken someone, they know exactly how to undermine their self-esteem and create insecurities. Their ability to adapt makes them chameleon-like, able to mold themselves to the environment in order to appear trustworthy and harmless. In addition to emotional manipulation, psychopaths also stand out for their incessant search for stimulation. As they don't feel deep emotions, their inner life is a constant void. To fill this void, they seek out activities that provide excitement and a sense of power. Many develop addictions to drugs, sex, gambling, or risky behavior because they need constant stimulation to avoid boredom. However, the greatest pleasure for a psychopath is control over others. Regardless of their position in society, whether as criminals, businessmen, politicians, or public figures, the desire to dominate is always present. For a psychopath, the world is a game of power where people are pieces to be moved at will. This explains why they are found in large numbers in positions of authority. Their charisma, their coolness under pressure, and their ability to manipulate make them especially suited to competitive environments. Martha Stout reports the case of a psychopathic patient who saw his condition not as a disorder, but as an advantage. He described his inability to feel guilt as a gift because it allowed him to act without hesitation. In fact, many psychopaths don't see themselves as sick or problematic. On the contrary, they consider themselves superior because they believe that the absence of emotions makes them more efficient and rational. This worldview reinforces their belief that they are different and better than other people, justifying their immoral acts. Behind the appearance of normality lies a social predator who sees life as a battlefield where only the strongest prevail. Their victims rarely realize the danger until it's too late. However, knowing how they think and act can be the best defense against their tactics. Psychopaths don't feel guilt or empathy, but that doesn't mean they're easy to spot. On the contrary, their true nature often goes unnoticed because they camouflage themselves perfectly in society. This ability to imitate is what makes their presence so insidious. Unlike someone who shows obvious signs of a mental disorder, a psychopath can appear perfectly normal, even more charismatic, charming, and confident than most people. Robert Hare describes this phenomenon as the mask of sanity, a disguise that psychopaths use to manipulate and control without arousing suspicion. They study human behavior and learn to imitate emotions in order to deceive others, not because they feel these emotions, but because they know that displaying them helps them blend in and gain trust. A psychopath may feign compassion, love, or concern, but these feelings are only strategic tools in their arsenal of manipulation. The fact that they are difficult to recognize is what makes them even more dangerous. Psychopaths are social predators and, like any predator, they know that the best way to hunt is undetected. Instead of frightening their victims with obvious aggression, they sneak up on them, gain their trust, and only reveal their true face when they are in control of the situation. This behavior is similar to that of certain predators in the animal kingdom, such as some species of spiders in Australia that mimic the smell and behavior of ants in order to live among them unnoticed until they are ready to attack. The comparison with natural predators is especially useful for understanding psychopathy. Just like some poisonous snakes or fish that disguise themselves to capture prey, psychopaths create a false social identity to attract victims. They learn to use words and gestures to create an impression of sincerity and trust. This skill makes them extremely persuasive and often irresistible. Ordinary people can be fooled because they judge others based on their own feelings and emotions without realizing that a psychopath doesn't feel the same way. This ability to hide behind a fabricated persona explains why many psychopaths achieve high positions. In the corporate world, for example, studies suggest that a significant number of CEOs and business leaders display psychopathic traits. Their ability to make decisions without being swayed by emotions, their strategic aggressiveness, and their lack of fear make them ideal candidates for highly competitive environments. While an ordinary person might hesitate to make a difficult decision for fear of the moral consequences, a psychopath acts without this concern, focused exclusively on their own benefit. In politics, the scenario is similar. Governments and institutions offer a perfect environment for psychopaths, as they are structures where manipulation, lying, and the quest for power are highly valued skills. The absence of empathy and the ability to deceive make psychopaths naturally suited to this type of environment. Polish psychiatrist Andrzej Łobaczewski even developed a specific term for this phenomenon: pathocracy, a system of government where individuals with psychopathic traits take control, corrupting the entire social structure and turning it into a tool of domination. The presence of psychopaths in positions of power is not mere speculation. Throughout history, tyrannical leaders who demonstrated a lack of empathy, emotional coldness, and an insatiable desire for control have caused large-scale human disasters. Dictators, financial criminals, and manipulative public figures follow a predictable pattern. They start out as charismatic figures, win the trust of their victims, and, when they have enough power, reveal their true nature. Even when they don't hold formal positions of power, psychopaths continue to wreak havoc in their personal spheres. They destroy relationships, exploit work colleagues, undermine the self-esteem of family members, and leave a trail of emotional destruction wherever they go. The problem is that by the time someone realizes the nature of a psychopath, they have usually already suffered irreparable damage. That's why spotting the signs early on is essential to avoid being manipulated and exploited. Despite their ability to camouflage themselves socially, psychopaths are not perfect. There are cracks in their mask of sanity that can be detected by those who pay attention. One of the most telling signs is their inflated sense of self-importance. Psychopaths believe that they are superior to others and that they deserve special treatment. Although they try to hide this arrogance at first, sooner or later they end up letting slip comments or behaviors that reflect their true worldview. Robert Hare describes this trait as a combination of extreme egocentrism and an exaggerated sense of entitlement. Psychopaths don't accept criticism, don't recognize mistakes, and often see themselves as great figures, whether in the professional environment, in personal relationships, or even in their fantasies. They manipulate others to put themselves at an advantage and can't stand being challenged or contradicted. Another classic sign of psychopathy is in the eyes. Many who have had contact with psychopaths report that looking directly into their eyes causes discomfort. Their facial expressions may seem normal at first glance, but something is missing, either a lack of genuine emotion or the cold intensity of their gaze. Some victims describe this experience as looking into a void or a predator watching its prey. This characteristic may be behind the modern myth that there are reptilian beings infiltrating humans. The truth is that the coldness in a psychopath's gaze doesn't come from a supernatural factor, but rather from their lack of authentic emotions. Martha Stout describes how some people react instinctively to the presence of a psychopath, feeling discomfort and unease without being able to explain exactly why. This sensation can be the result of small details that our brain picks up without us consciously realizing it. The absence of emotional micro-expressions, a strange body posture, or a lack of reactivity when faced with emotionally charged situations. Another revealing trait lies in the way a psychopath communicates. Contrary to popular belief, they are not always convincing or articulate. Although they can be charismatic and persuasive, their speeches often contain inconsistencies, contradictions, and abrupt changes of subject. When confronted about something they have said, they usually respond evasively, ignoring the question or diverting the conversation to another topic. Robert Hare observes that psychopaths are notorious for giving answers that seem disconnected from the original question, as if they were not really committed to the truth, but just saying whatever is necessary to maintain their facade. In addition, some psychopaths accompany their speech with exaggerated gestures and body expressions that seem out of place. Studies suggest that these movements may be a reflection of the different way their brains process language and emotion. However, this behavior also works as a distraction. While using their hands in a theatrical way, they divert the listener's attention from their words, making it difficult for them to perceive their contradictions and lies. Another factor that makes psychopaths difficult to detect is their lack of genuine emotional reaction. In situations that would normally arouse fear, sadness, or empathy, they remain impassive. While the average person shows physiological signs of stress when lying, such as changes in heart rate, sweating hands, or slight tremors, psychopaths lie with absolute calm. This lack of emotional response makes the lie detector practically useless for identifying psychopaths, as they don't experience the automatic reactions that most people would have when deceiving someone. Although many psychopaths are never recognized as such, these signs offer valuable clues to those who learn to observe them. The cold, penetrating gaze, speech full of inconsistencies, lack of emotional reactions, and uncontrollable self-centeredness are all traits that, when combined, can reveal the presence of a social predator. However, even when their masks begin to crack, psychopaths remain dangerous because they know how to manipulate and disorient their victims before they realize what is really happening. Psychopathy has been extensively studied by neuroscience and psychology, and the results indicate that its origin is deeply linked to biological factors. Unlike disorders that can be triggered by trauma or life experiences, psychopathy seems to have a strong genetic component. Studies suggest that psychopaths' brains function differently, especially in areas linked to emotional control, empathy, and fear. Brain imaging research has revealed that psychopaths show reduced activity in the amygdala, the region of the brain responsible for processing emotions such as fear and empathy. In normal people, the amygdala is activated when we see someone in danger or suffering, generating an emotional response that leads us to help. However, in psychopaths, this reaction does not occur. They can witness another person's pain without feeling anything at all. This explains why they are capable of committing cruel acts without remorse. Another important neurological aspect is the abnormal functioning of the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for controlling impulses and making ethical decisions. In a study conducted by neuroscientist James Fallon, it was discovered that psychopaths have less activity in this area, which may explain their tendency to act impulsively and without considering the moral consequences of their actions. Fallon, who has spent years studying psychopathy, made a shocking discovery when he analyzed his own brain. He had the same neural pattern as a psychopath. The difference, according to him, was the environment in which he was raised. This suggests that although genetics plays a significant role, the environment can also influence whether an individual with a predisposition to psychopathy will become a social predator or manage to contain their impulses. Psychopaths' resistance to change is also due to their distorted worldview. Many believe that they are superior to others and that their lack of empathy is an advantage. Ted Bundy, for example, described guilt as a harmful social control mechanism, suggesting that those who feel remorse are fools. This perspective makes any attempt at rehabilitation extremely difficult. Unlike ordinary criminals who can feel regret and change their behavior, psychopaths see no problem with their actions. On the contrary, they often believe that they are special and that moral rules don't apply to them. This explains why traditional treatments fail miserably with psychopaths. Empathy-based therapies, for example, can have the opposite effect and teach a psychopath to become an even more effective manipulator. In some cases, rehabilitation programs only refine their social and persuasion skills, making them more dangerous rather than more aware. The problem of psychopathy is not limited to isolated individuals. As we discussed earlier, psychopaths are attracted to positions of power where they can exert control over a large number of people. When psychopaths reach positions of leadership, whether in politics, the corporate world, or any other hierarchical structure, the damage they can cause is amplified. Authoritarian governments, financial scams, and corporate scandals often have psychopaths behind the scenes, manipulating situations for their own benefit, with no regard for the consequences for others. The only real defense against psychopathy is awareness. The more we understand how these individuals operate, the better prepared we are to identify them and protect ourselves from their manipulations. Knowledge about psychopathy empowers us to avoid falling into their traps and makes us less vulnerable to their strategies. If this video has brought you new insights, helped you see certain situations from a new perspective, or made you reflect on people who have crossed your path, please leave a like to strengthen the channel. This helps spread the word about this content and gives more people access to this information. If you want to support it even more, consider leaving a valeur de mai of any amount. This way, you contribute to more content like this continuing to be produced. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. See you next time.